when I got up this morning to let the dogs out to go to the bathroom, the garage door was open and um, the top was off the garbage can where I keep the dog food. And fortunately, the bears had not taken it all or made a big mess. And then I went out with the dogs and got back in. And when I got back in, I shut the garage door. I had evidently forgotten to do it last night. And then about 30 seconds later, I heard the garage door opening again and it popped up. And then about 30 seconds later, it shut. And it was operating on its own. It was doing its own thing, just opening and shutting randomly. And the first comment is that I am delighted that when it did this, and presumably it was a bear who took the top of the garage door or top of the garbage can off, I am delighted that it didn't shut on a bear, because a bear panicking caught in the garage would have been a drag. Well, for both the bear and for me having to clean it up. Anyway, but the interesting thing is, so I just turned off the garage door opener, unclutched it, and now I just open it and close it by hand. And that's part one of the story. Part two of the story is a friend has a broken gate, and I am not a particularly handy person, but nonetheless, I'm a good neighbor, and I went over with my portable electric drill to attempt to sort of splint the broken part of the gate. And so I'm a good neighbor and a bad handy person in that, of course, the electric drill was not charged. And I can't find the charger, of course. And so I was attempting to screw the screws by hand. And this brings me to a little bit of my point, which is I'm old enough to remember when garage doors were open manually. And I was, as a child, that was one of my jobs when we would go somewhere. When we get home, then Derek jumps out of the back seat, runs over, opens the garage for everybody. And I'm also old enough to remember the days before electric screwdrivers. When there was a project to be done, it was hard work. And in fact, I remember when I was a kid, we had a tool that must have been, so I was, this is 1965, I'm 5 years old, 1968, I'm 8 years old, 7 years old. And the tool was probably 30, 40 years old. And it was a hand drill that was a piece of metal that went like that. And then you put a bit in it and you drill by hand. And that's one generation back from me. And my point is that it's the Doobie Brothers album that I think about so often. What were once vices are now habits. And I just think, this is not one of my big anti-technology screeds, because honestly, if I had a choice of framing a house using a pneumatic hammer or a hammer, I'll choose a pneumatic hammer. And if I have a choice between fixing a gate, by the way, I did not fix the gate by hand. Instead, today I'm going to Home Depot and buying another charger. But it still strikes me as absolutely extraordinary the speed with which technology is escalating. And I'm not, I'm not doing my standard I hate technology thing, even though I do. And I'm also in no way doing the sort of Jeff Bezos, oh, isn't technology wonderful thing, because it's not. It's just, I think it's extraordinary how fast we come to. So when I was out with the dogs and the garage door, and I took the dogs back out after again, they do a 2-stage pooping, which is information you didn't need. When I was out with the dogs again, I was thinking, okay, when I get back inside, I'm going to have to look up online what you do about a garage door opener that's going haywire. How quickly we have come to rely on the internet for just, it's extraordinary how much sort of, how in some ways it's a giant encyclopedia. And I find it really, the thing I'm trying to emphasize here is just this, the rapidity with which this is all happening and the completeness with which we are accepting its takeover of our everyday lives, and how much we have come to rely on it. And now comes the political part, which is, it ain't gonna last. And it will be very interesting and horrifying to see what happens to all of us addicts as our supply of juice dries up.